All right, Nick, let's talk about the Houston Texans. I think this is one of the most exciting teams coming in to this regular season because this is a team who was already great, but added some really nice additions. Most notably, Stephon Diggs is the guy that I'm thinking of, the crown jewel of this offseason. But when people hear Diggs, they think about the end of last season and just kind of how hostile, how toxic it was with his departure from Buffalo. But I think the news we've been hearing around this Texans team that is not the guy that is in Houston. This is a guy who really is doing a great job fitting in very well. And I think there's one guy in particular that has really helped him out. I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Stephon Diggs, completely different guy, it seems, in Houston. I think that's all to be attributed to young, phenomenal quarterback, CJ Stroud. It seems like this guy's leadership has really rubbed off and helped Diggs fit into this Houston Texans organization. Let's jump into the article and we'll talk more about this on the other side. This again from the Yard Barker. It says Houston Texans star wide receiver Stephon Diggs raised some eyebrows when he revealed in a recent interview that he was in the worst mental space I've been in since I entered the league during his final season with the Buffalo Bills. Diggs indicated while speaking about Texans quarterback CJ Stroud on Thursday that he's in a much better place ahead of Houston's Week 1 game at the Indianapolis Colts this coming Sunday. Says it's been a nice road, Diggs said about joining the Texans via an offseason trade. As ESPN's DJ Ben Amin shared, I look at Stroud as family, not just my quarterback. I'm rocking with him through thick and thin. I always tell him I'm with you when you're right and I'm with you when you're wrong. Nick, I love this sentiment from Diggs because you really just didn't see that between him and Allen. There was a lot of adversarial conversations. There's a lot of, animosity on that team at the end. And it just seems like Diggs quickly gelled with Stroud, and Stroud has attracted Diggs, and really they've grown fonder and fonder over just a short offseason. Curious what your thoughts on this relationship are. But before we get to you, Nick, Texan fans, in the comment section below, article says it. Facing the Indianapolis Colts early on this season, what are you thinking the game is going to look like? Does Diggs go off for like 300 yards and like 3 touchdowns? Is it going to be a massive shootout? Let us know what your predictions for the score of this game are in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about really Stroud's leadership and how it's affected Diggs?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there that this is 100% CJ Stroud, and it's a clear differentiator between Josh Allen in Buffalo, who's an outstanding quarterback in his own right, and CJ Stroud, how the Texans really continue to be just lucky as all get out that they have him as their quarterback, because it's not just his physical tools, Stroud's physical tools, which are, of course, absolutely ridiculous. It's his leadership, it's his ability to manage personalities. There's a line from a movie a few years ago talking about Steve Jobs, a late CEO and founder of Apple. He was asked what he did, right? He wasn't an engineer. He wasn't a coder. What did he do? And he would sit there and say, look, the engineers, the coders, they're like musicians in an orchestra. I'm the conductor. I play the orchestra. And that's exactly what quarterbacks have to do in the National Football League, specifically with their wide receivers. We know they've got big personalities. They know they want a lot of attention. They know they want the football. And we know if things go wrong very quickly, it's usually the receivers leading the charge. So what is the quarterback's primary off the field responsibility? Manage his teammates, right? Get everybody on the same page, work them together, make everybody feel good, right? It's kind of weird to think about because these are grown men, right, in their 20s, in some cases 30s. But the reality is it's a very emotional, very type A alpha personality kind of things, these locker rooms. You need to have leaders like CJ Stroud that can manage those personalities to get everyone happy, everyone content, everyone on the same page. And Diggs coming away from the Buffalo Bills, this was the biggest concern because he's obviously still an incredibly talented, very productive football player. But would he go to Houston and hurt the locker room, the great chemistry and culture they had built in just a short time under DeMeco Ryans? And thanks, I think, exclusively to CJ Stroud, like this article says, he hasn't, and it's directly because of Stroud's leadership. Again, we know his physical tools are great, but what separates the great from the extraordinary, the good from the great at the quarterback position, it isn't the physical tools. There's a lot of players that have really, really good physical tools. Trey Lance, the bust originally drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, great physical tools. Justin Justin Fields has great physical tools. Heck, even Zach Wilson, he had pretty darn good physical tools. What separates those guys from quality players? It's the ability to manage personalities. It's the ability to lead, and that's exactly what CJ Stroud is really showing here. And I think it's a great sign for the Houston Texans. Again, they're going to be really good this year. We all know it, but I think the future continues to look bright in Houston, mainly because of CJ Stroud.
And you bring up the point. It's like divas. Everybody has a little bit of diva in them when they're a superstar player, especially when you're talking historically the wide receiver position. One of the most, I would say, there's that old adage where they say, you'll love for your receivers to have a little bit of diva in them. That's how you know they're going to be good. You think of like the Chris Carters of the world, the Randy Mosses of the world, the Antonio Browns of the world. All those guys, a little bit of devious. One of those guys, really talented, probably took it a little bit too far, I will say. But when you look at star wide receivers, you look at guys, and I think back to the playoff game at the end of the season, where it just feels like Josh Allen was not feeding Diggs the ball as much. He wasn't stroking the ego of the star player as much, and it's really led to the devolution of that team, I believe. I think CJ Stroud, he knows what they have in Diggs already. They haven't even played a game, but it shows he knows how to treat a star player. Sometimes you have to, when you can't necessarily feed the guy the ball some, you have to, stroke the ego in different ways, hang out with them, make sure everybody's good, show them that you care about them. And if you can't manage that personality, you're going to lose the locker room, eventually going to lose the team. That's what happened in Buffalo. But I think we're already seeing that CJ Stroud knows exactly what to do with Diggs and has shown him that, hey, Diggs is already saying, I ride or die with CJ Stroud. I'm going to do when he's right, I'm with him. When he's wrong, I'm also with him. So, I mean, what more could you want to hear from a guy? I think it's shown this was a great move by the Texans front office to bring this guy in, knowing that they had a young guy, but still they had a guy that was capable of handling someone like Diggs. I think this just bodes very well for them and shows that CJ Stroud is going to be an absolute weapon in the locker room for the future of this team.
Yeah, and there's one important statistic I want to bring up. You brought up Randy Moss as a diva-ish receiver. Again, you compare Randy Moss most of his career with his time in New England Patriots with Tom Brady, a great leader, of course, in his own regard. Randy Moss, to this day, just talks lovingly about Tom Brady and his time with the Patriots. But if you look at the numbers, he was actually, even though he put up a lot of productive seasons with New England, obviously, his number of targets, the number of times the football was thrown his way, wasn't even close to the top of the list in his career compared with some other stops. So again, it's about that leadership in the locker room. Randy Moss loves the Patriots. He's a little bit lukewarm to the Minnesota Vikings right now, even though the Vikings threw him the football a lot more, right? It's all about leadership. It was all about Brady with the Patriots, and that's exactly what we're seeing right here, CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans.